Hola amigos! Thanks for joining me. We're gonna read the last two chapters of our book, Magic Treehouse number 8, Midnight on the Moon. Mary Pope Osborne. I'm still here in my backyard. Excited to see what happens next. So what did we end chapter 8 with? Who remembers? That's right! Let's say it together, the chant. Moonstone, mango, mammoth bone, mouse. And who appeared? Morgan Le Fay. So that's what we have here. Chapter 9, Capítulo 9. Morgan. Página 60. Thank you, Morgan said softly. You have freed me from the magician's spell. Jack just stared at her. You were Peanut? Annie said. Morgan nodded and smiled. Really? You were with us all this time, said Jack, on all of our missions? Morgan nodded again. Why did we have to go on this mission to find a mouse? Said Jack, if you were always with us. To break the spell, you had to be on the moon, said Morgan. You could have broken it the minute we arrived. Oh, that's what you were trying to say, said Annie. We didn't have to leave the moon base after all. Morgan nodded, smiling. But the moon man came along to help us. He drew a constellation of a mouse. Is he a friend of yours? Morgan shrugged. Let's just say we had a little talk. He stopped by the moon base while you were out. The same way you had a talk with the ninja master, said Jack, and the monkey, and the sorcerer. Morgan nodded. I always squeaked to the ones who helped you. But how did they understand you? A mouse, said Jack. Morgan smiled again. Certain wise ones understand the language of little creatures, she said. I bet it was you who turned the pages of the book, said Annie, to show us where to go next. Morgan nodded. But who turned you into a mouse? Said Annie. Morgan frowned. A certain person who likes to play tricks on me, she said. His name is Merlin. Merlin, said Jack, the greatest magician who ever lived. Morgan sniffed. He's not that great, she said. He doesn't even know I have 2 brave friends who help me. Us, said Annie shyly. Morgan nodded, and I thank you both with all of my heart. You're welcome, said Jack and Annie. Morgan handed Annie the Pennsylvania book. Are you ready to go home now? She asked. Yes, said Jack and Annie. Annie pointed to the picture of Frog Creek Woods. I wish we could go there, she said. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. But only for a moment. Page 65. 65. Capítulo 10, Chapter 10, Earth Life. The midnight woods woke up. The breeze rustled the leaves. An owl hooted. The sounds were soft but very alive. Jack opened his eyes. He pushed his glasses into place. He smiled. Morgan was still there with them. He could see her in the moonlight. Her long white hair was shining. Morgan, can you and the treehouse stay here in Frog Creek? No, I must leave again. I'm afraid to say I've been gone from Camelot for a long time. Morgan said. She handed Jack his pack. She brushed his cheek. Her hands felt soft and cool. A bit of moon dust is still on you, she said. Thank you, Jack, for your great love of knowledge. You're welcome, said Jack. Morgan tugged on one of Annie's braids. And thank you, Annie, for your belief in the impossible. You're welcome, said Annie. Go home now, said Morgan. Jack smiled. Home was Earth, that bright, colorful world where everything was alive and always changing. Bye, Morgan, said Annie. She started out the treehouse. Jack looked back at Morgan. Will you come back soon? He asked. Anything can happen, said Morgan. The universe is full of wonders. Isn't it, Jack? He smiled and nodded. Go now, Morgan said softly. Jack followed Annie down the rope ladder. He stepped onto the ground. The wind started to blow. The trees started to shake. A loud roar filled Jack's ears. He squeezed his eyes shut and covered his ears. Then everything was silent and still. Jack opened his eyes. The ladder was gone. He thought through the leaves and branches of the giant oak tree where the tree house had been was now only moonlight. Bye, Morgan, he whispered sadly. Bye, Peanut, said Annie. Jack and Annie stared at the top of the tree for a long moment. Ready? Said Annie. Jack nodded. They started for home. The midnight air felt cool and moist. It was filled with soft sounds of earth life. Jack and Annie left the Frog Creek woods. They started down their street. Annie glanced up at the sky. The moon looks really far away, doesn't it? It did, thought Jack, and it was. I wonder how the Moon Man can be up there all alone, said Annie. What do you mean, said Jack. I mean, who helps him put on his spacesuit, said Annie. Who helps him get up when he falls down? And who is he? Who do you think he was, said Annie. He must be a scientist or an astronaut from Earth, said Jack. No, I think he's an alien from another galaxy, said Annie. Jack scoffed. What makes you say that? I just feel it. Wrong, said Jack. There's no proof that aliens exist. Maybe not now, but don't forget, we were in the future. Oh, said Jack. They crossed their yard and climbed their back steps. Annie tiptoed into the house, and Jack followed her. Before he shut the door, he glanced at the moon. La Luna. Was Annie right, he wondered? Could the Moon Man have come from another galaxy? Morgan's words came back to him. The universe is full of wonders. Isn't it, Jack? Good night, Moon Man, Jack whispered. Then he closed the door. And that's the end of Midnight on the Moon. It completed at page 70, Página 70. Thank you so much for joining me, friends. It's been so wonderful to read for you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you next time. Hasta luego.